Today we're making this thick, spirally pork roulade with a peppery, spicy sauce. Let's get started. Here I use a 3-pound pork loin. For the filling you'll need half an onion, the zest of 4 lemons or limes, parsley, garlic, and chili peppers. First chop your veggies. Dice up the onion. We're going to mince the garlic and chilies. I would go for a reasonably fine dice on the onions. I'm going to go ahead and de-seed the serranos because, well, I'm a wuss, and I'm okay with that. We're also going to chop the parsley pretty finely because we're using the stalks and they'll soften up in the oven. Next, we're going to go ahead and zest our citrus. We're going to try to go pull to pull with the microplane here, and that's all the ingredients for the filling. Next, we're going to chop down the ingredients for the sauce. This includes 2 red bell peppers, 2 squash, 4 tomatoes, the other half of the onion, and another serrano pepper. For the bell peppers, I like to use this technique where I roll the pepper through the knife around its circumference, almost like unwrapping the pepper. I find this method the most efficient, but you can judge for yourself. After unwrapping the bell pepper, slice it to give the blender a head start. We're going to also dice the remaining half onion and chop up the squashes and tomato. Since these are all going into a blender in the end, precise cuts are not so important. Now we're going to go ahead and cook the filling. I have a non-stick pan on medium-high heat. We're going to add some olive oil and dump in the onions, garlic, serranos, and some salt. In addition to salt, we'll be seasoning with 1 tablespoon of pepper, garlic powder, paprika, and half a tablespoon of cumin. Cook off the spices for 3 to 5 minutes until the onions are soft. Then, turn the stove off and toss in the parsley and citrus zest, letting the residual heat wilt them a bit, and the filling is done. Alright, so the next step, we're going to prepare the pork loin. Our goal here is to flatten this cylindrical loin to a 1/2 inch thickness. To do this, make long cuts about 1/2 inch from the outer surface of the loin and continue cutting circumferentially. It's pretty similar to how I was cutting the bell pepper. Once the pork is flattened out, the canvas is ready for us to paint our filling on. You want an even distribution of the filling throughout the pork, and it's at this time that I take the opportunity to add a little bit more garlic, because man, I love garlic. Press and massage in your filling, and don't forget to season liberally with salt, since this is going to be a thick pork loin, and you want the inside to be well seasoned. Otherwise, it's just going to be bland. Our next step is to tie the roast off. We're going to need around 5 strips of twine, about 2 feet long. Make sure it's food-safe string. Then we're going to roll the pork loin as tightly as we can. It's not a big deal if some of the filling comes out while you're rolling it tightly. As you can see, I just pick it up and toss it back into the roll. Once you're done rolling it tightly, we're ready to start tying it up. To truss the roast up, we're going to wrap the twine around and tie it off every 3/4 of an inch to an inch. This will prevent the pork loin from unraveling when we transfer it into the pan to sear or to the oven for roasting. Some have asked me how to tie these knots, but it really doesn't matter what kind of knots you use, as long as it's tight enough to get the job done. Here I use one-handed surgical knots that I learned during medical school. I throw 2 knots in the same direction, creating a slip knot that allows me to cinch the second throw down tightly. Here's the first knot. You see my left hand is in front. Now here's the second knot. It's the left hand in front again. And here's the third knot where I square it with the right hand in front. The second knot lets me cinch it down to make sure that my knot is tight. So now all the prep has been complete and we're ready to cook. First, we're going to sear the roast and get it nice and brown on all sides. Depending on your stove and your pan, this could take 45 to 90 seconds per side, but you'll just kind of keep rolling and eyeballing it until you get a nice brown crust. Pretty similar to the one that you're seeing here. Now it's time to put the roast in a preheated 425° Fahrenheit oven for around 30 minutes depending on the size of the roast. It's best to gauge with the thermometer, and I'll be aiming for an internal temperature between 135 and 140° Fahrenheit. While the roast is chilling in the oven for 30 minutes, we have plenty of time to cook the sauce. In a heated saucepan, add a tablespoon of oil and cook down the tomatoes, squash, onions, and bell peppers. This is also a great time to add dry herbs like oregano or basil. Don't forget salt and pepper. Continue cooking until it's reached this consistency. Now we're going to take it over to the blender and blend it. I have a stick immersion blender here, but any blender should work. We're going to keep blending the sauce until it reaches our desired consistency. If you like it chunkier, go for it. As Chef John would say at this point, you are the boss of your red pepper sauce. Don't forget to re-season to adjust for salt as you blend. It's a great time to check for seasoning. Around the same time you finish making your sauce, it'll be time to get the roast out of the oven and check the temperature. Here we're temping around 135 Fahrenheit, which is perfect, and we're going to let it rest for half the cooking time, around 15 minutes. After you finish resting, don't forget to cut off the twine, and then you're going to slice to serve. For slicing, I like to do some thin slices because it feels more tender. If you like thicker slabs, go for it. I wouldn't recommend going any thicker than half an inch though, because pork loin still tends to be a little bit on the dry side and a little tough because of its low fat content. Now for the fun part. It's time to plate. I'd usually have a lot more garnishes, but due to the lockdown from coronavirus, it's been kind of hard finding all the ingredients I want. So we'll keep it simple. I start with a pool of the sauce at the bottom, then I just plop 2 slices of the pork roulade on top and garnish with a little bit of parsley. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed my pork roulade tutorial. See you on the next one.